The words echoed through the sterile hallway of St. Vincent's Hospital in New York City at 6:12 a.m., colder than the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. "We're losing her." A 7-year-old girl lay on the gurney, her lips-tinged blue eyes closed in unconsciousness. Blood seeped through the white bandages on her abdomen, spreading like a silent alarm. The monitor beeped in short, frantic bursts, her vital signs plummeting. The doctor shouted as he shoved the gurney through the double doors to the operating room. "Severe internal hemorrhage, blood pressure's crashing. We need a transfusion now." "Oh, negative. We don't have enough." "Oh, negative." The hallway fell silent. "Oh, negative. The rarest blood type. No stock in the reserves, no time to waste." The clock had started ticking. A young nurse, her voice trembling, added, "The bank's got half a unit left. Not enough for a child this size." The chief surgeon shook his head, eyes fixed on the screen. "Call the blood bank. Call everyone." Phones rang urgently. The OR doors slammed shut. The wall clock ticked relentlessly each second, stripping away a sliver of hope. Outside, a woman stood frozen, her hands gripping the armrest of a chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her expensive blazer was crumpled and sweat-stained. Victoria Ashford, the powerful CEO featured on magazine covers for her unyielding business acumen, was no longer that unbreakable figure. She was just a mother. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking, "save my daughter." No one answered. There was nothing to promise. 2 hours earlier, everything had been normal. Emily, her daughter, had been giggling in the back seat of the car, asking if they could have pizza or pasta for dinner. Then came the sudden excruciating abdominal pain. Blood. Sirens wailing through the city streets. Now Emily's life hung by a thread because of something money couldn't buy. Blood. Rare blood. And time. At the far end of the hallway, Marcus Webb sat slumped against the wall, his thin jacket draped over his arm. Beside him was his 6-year-old daughter Lily, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. They were there for her routine heart checkup. A familiar appointment, nothing dramatic. Marcus overheard every word. He heard "oh, negative." He heard "not enough." He glanced down at Lily. She looked up at him with those clear, innocent eyes. "Daddy, what's wrong with that girl?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He placed a hand on his wrist, an old habit from his days as a volunteer firefighter, and realized what no one else had said aloud. He had O negative blood. A nurse rushed by, tears streaking her face. "If we had a donor with O negative right now, we could try." Marcus stood up. No fanfare, no hesitation. He walked straight to the desk. "I'll donate." The nurse blinked in surprise. "Are you sure? Do you know the risks? You have a child?" Marcus turned back, kneeling in front of Lily, their foreheads touching. "Daddy's going away for a bit. You wait here, okay?" Lily nodded, hugging her rabbit tighter. "Okay, Daddy. Save her, I'll wait." 30 minutes. That's all they had. The needle pierced his skin. The bag began to fill drop by drop. On the other side of the doors, the surgeon called out, "We've got blood." Victoria lifted her head. She followed the line of the tube, catching a glimpse of the man donating his face, pale jacket, worn fists clenched. In that moment, she had no idea this man was someone she had once dismissed without a second thought. In the dimly lit donation room, the fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow on Marcus Webb's pale face. The needle in his arm throbbed faintly, but he barely noticed. The bag beside him filled steadily with deep red blood, drop by drop, a quiet act of sacrifice. No one cheered. No cameras flashed. Just a poor single father giving away the only thing he had left to offer. Through the frosted glass door, Marcus could see Lily, his 6-year-old daughter, sitting on a plastic chair, her small legs swinging just above the floor. She was scribbling with a set of worn crayons on a scrap of paper the nurse had given her, her stuffed rabbit propped up like a silent companion. Every few minutes, she looked up, caught his eye, and smiled a simple, trusting grin that made his chest tighten. He remembered the day 3 years ago when everything changed. His wife, Sarah, had collapsed in their tiny apartment kitchen, her heart failing after years of quiet struggle with a congenital defect. Marcus had held her hand in the ambulance, whispering promises he couldn't keep, while Lily then just clutched her rabbit in confusion. After the funeral, he'd taken the janitorial job at Ashford Enterprises, the massive corporate headquarters downtown, to make ends meet. Long nights mopping floors, scrubbing restrooms, all for a paycheck that barely covered rent and Lily's medications. But it was enough. They had each other, and that was his world's simple, unyielding love. The nurse monitoring him furrowed her brow. "You're sure about this? With your build and the amount we're taking, you might feel dizzy for days." "You have a little girl out there?" Marcus nodded firmly, his voice steady. "That kid in there needs to live. I'll be fine." In the operating room, the bag arrived like a lifeline. The surgeon connected it, swiftly barking orders. "Start the transfusion monitor, her pressure." Emily Ashford's tiny body responded almost immediately. Her blood pressure flickered upward on the screen, her pale cheeks gaining a hint of color. The team exhaled collectively, the tension easing just enough to allow a glimmer of hope. Outside, Victoria Ashford paced the hallway, her heels clicking softly against the linoleum. She had glimpsed the donor through the glass, a man with a gaunt face, worn clothes, and an unwavering calm. Something about his eyes tugged at her memory, familiar, yet distant. As he emerged from the donation room, slightly unsteady on his feet, Victoria froze. The face clicked into place. The nurse nearby whispered confirmation. "That's Marcus Webb. He works as a janitor at your company's headquarters." The memory hit her like a wave. Just that morning in the gleaming lobby of Ashford Enterprises, she'd been rushing to a board meeting. Marcus had been mopping a spill near the elevators, his bucket accidentally tipping as she brushed past. Water splashed her designer shoes. In her frustration, another late night, another deal on the line she'd snapped at him. "Watch where you're going. Do you even know how to do your job, or are you just useless?" He'd apologized, quietly mopping it up without a word of protest. She hadn't even looked at his face long enough to remember it. Now here he was, the man she'd dismissed as insignificant, saving her daughter's life. Victoria pushed open the door to the recovery area where Marcus was resting. He sat on the edge of the bed, sipping water from a paper cup. She approached hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know how to thank you." Marcus looked up, his eyes kind but guarded. "You don't need to. I didn't do it for thanks. But if it wasn't for your blood, Emily wouldn't have made it." Her words caught in her throat. He shrugged lightly. "Kids deserve a chance. That's all." At that moment, Lily burst into the room, her crayons clutched in one hand. She ran straight to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Daddy, are you okay? The nurse said you were a hero." Marcus ruffled her hair, pulling her onto his lap. "I'm fine, kiddo. Just a little tired." Victoria watched the scene unfold, the effortless bond, the way Lily leaned into him without fear or doubt. It was a warmth she rarely felt in her own life, surrounded by boardrooms and bottom lines. For the first time, she saw the chasm between her world of power and his, of quiet strength. It humbled her, stirring something deep and unfamiliar. Marcus woke to the faint hum of hospital machines, his head heavy and his arm aching from the needle's sting. The recovery room was quiet, save for the occasional beep from a monitor down the hall. He blinked against the harsh light, his first thought not for himself, but for Lily. She was curled up on a nearby chair, her small chest rising and falling in sleep, the stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin like a shield. A kind nurse must have draped a thin blanket over her. He sat up slowly, ignoring the wave of dizziness. Lily stirred at the movement, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy," she murmured, rubbing her face with one hand. "I'm right here, sweetie." Marcus reached out, pulling her into a gentle hug. She nestled against him, her warmth chasing away the chill in his veins. "Does it hurt?" Lily asked, her voice small but steady, peering at the bandage on his arm. "A little," he admitted, smiling to ease her worry. "But it's okay. Heroes have to deal with a bit of ouch sometimes." Lily giggled softly, but her eyes were serious. "You're my hero, Daddy." Marcus's throat tightened. His world narrowed to this, his daughter, her trust, the quiet moments that made everything else bearable. He thought of Sarah again, how she'd held Lily as a baby, whispering lullabies during those endless nights. Losing her had carved a hollow in him, but Lily filled it every day with her questions, her laughter, her unwavering faith in him. Outside the room, Victoria sat on a bench, cradling a cold cup of coffee. The events of the morning replayed in her mind like a relentless loop. The sirens, Emily's pale face, the doctor's grim words. But now, woven into it all, was Marcus, the man she'd barely noticed before, the one whose blood coursed through her daughter's veins. She reflected on her life, endless meetings, deals sealed with handshakes, a penthouse that felt more like a showroom than a home. She'd built an empire, convinced that success meant control, that love could be scheduled like appointments. But watching Emily fight for life had stripped that illusion away. What good was power if it left her alone in a hallway, begging for a miracle? She glanced through the door's small window, seeing Marcus tie Lily's shoelace with patient hands. The gesture was so ordinary, yet it pierced her. Here was a man with nothing, no title, no wealth, pouring everything into his child. It made her feel exposed, insignificant in a way her boardroom battles never had. Gathering her resolve, Victoria knocked softly and entered. "Would you like to see Emily? She's awake now." Marcus hesitated, glancing at Lily, who nodded eagerly. "Sure, if it's okay." In Emily's room, the girl lay propped up on pillows, her color returning, but her eyes still weary. She looked at Marcus curiously, then smiled faintly. "You're the one who gave me blood, right?" Marcus shook his head modestly. "I just gave you some time. You did the hard part, kid." Emily turned to her mother, who stood at the bedside, voice thick with emotion. "Mom, he saved me." Victoria met Marcus's gaze. "I haven't truly understood what love means," she confessed quietly. "I've been so focused on building things, companies, walls, that I've forgotten how to just be there." Marcus leaned against the wall, his expression thoughtful. "I lost my wife 3 years ago. Heart condition. It tore me apart, but it taught me something. Love isn't about never falling down. It's about staying when everything gets messy, when it's inconvenient, when there's no reward waiting." The words hung in the air, simple, yet profound. Victoria felt them settle in her chest, challenging the life she'd constructed. For the first time, she saw her absences, the missed bedtimes, the hurried goodbyes, not as necessities, but as choices she'd made. As Marcus prepared to leave with Lily, Victoria touched his arm lightly. "Thank you. Not just for the blood, but for showing me what I've been missing. I want to learn, starting today." He nodded, no judgment in his eyes. Learning's a good place to begin. 3 days after Emily's discharge from the hospital, Victoria Ashford found herself unable to return to her office. The sprawling penthouse in Manhattan felt emptier than ever, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of a city she once conquered but now seemed distant and irrelevant. She sat in the living room, surrounded by leather sofas and abstract art worth fortunes, but her mind wandered back to the cramped recovery room at St. Vincent's. The pale linoleum floors, the beeping machines, and Marcus's words echoing like a quiet challenge. Love isn't about never falling down. It's about staying when everything gets messy, when it's inconvenient. She replayed the morning's events, her empire of deals and deadlines crumbling under the weight of what she'd witnessed. Money had built her life, but it couldn't buy the effortless bond she'd seen between Marcus and Lily. For years, she'd convinced herself that providing for Emily, private schools, nannies, the best of everything was enough. But now, staring at her phone, she admitted the truth: she'd never truly stayed. Not for her daughter, not for anyone. Her fingers hovered over the number she'd gotten from the nurse. With a deep breath, she dialed. Marcus answered on the third ring, his voice rough from coaxing Lily down for a nap. "Hello, it's Victoria. I hope I'm not interrupting." A pause, then a soft chuckle. "No, just folding laundry. First time getting a call from a CEO makes me a little nervous." She smiled despite herself. "I was wondering, could I invite you and Lily over for dinner sometime? Emily would love to see her." Another pause, warmer this time. "Sure, Lily would like that too." The evening arrived sooner than expected. Victoria's chef prepared a simple meal, roast chicken vegetables, nothing extravagant, but she dismissed him early, wanting the house to feel real, not staged. The doorbell rang, and there stood Marcus, in a clean shirt and jeans, Lily beside him, clutching a drawing she'd made for Emily. The girls hit it off, immediately disappearing upstairs to Emily's room with giggles and shared toys. Marcus and Victoria settled on the back terrace, the city lights twinkling below like distant stars. She poured him a glass of iced tea, her hand steadier than she felt. "You showed me something I thought I understood, but never really lived," she said quietly, staring at the horizon. "I've spent my life building walls, thinking they protected me. But they've kept me from everything." Marcus sipped his tea, his gaze thoughtful. "I get that. After Sarah died, I built walls too, just to survive. But Lily knocked them down every day. Kids have a way of doing that." Victoria turned to him, her voice vulnerable. "I want to learn how to love without conditions. Not because you saved Emily, but because being around you makes me want to be better, to stay even when it's hard." He set his glass down, meeting her eyes. "I've been alone for a long time, Victoria. I'm used to no one choosing me." She reached across the table, her hand brushing his. "I'm choosing you, not out of pity, but because your heart makes me feel small in the best way. I want to know if there's room in your life and Lily's for someone who's still learning." Marcus held her gaze for a long moment, the city noise fading into silence. He didn't rush. Finally, he exhaled softly, like releasing a breath he'd held for years. "Our door's always been open, if you're willing to step in and stay." The weeks blurred into a gentle rhythm. Marcus and Lily visited more often weekends at first, then midweek dinners. Victoria learned to make Lily's favorite soy milk without curdling, laughing at her own kitchen disasters. Marcus showed her how to tie ribbons on Barbie dolls, his patient hands guiding hers. They argued lightly over small things, bedtimes, TV shows, but always resolved with quiet talks on the terrace, no egos in the way. One crisp autumn evening, as the girls slept upstairs, Victoria led Marcus to the living room. She handed him a small box, wrapped in plain paper. "This is for you." He opened it carefully. Inside was a key on a leather fob engraved with a single word, "Stay." Her eyes met his, steady and sincere. "I don't know how to do this perfectly, but I know how to choose someone who makes me want to try for a lifetime. I don't need a big wedding. I just need to wake up knowing you're not going anywhere." Marcus traced the engraving with his thumb, his voice thick. "You don't need to learn anymore. You've been loving right all along." 1 month after Emily's discharge from St. Vincent's, Victoria Ashford's sprawling Manhattan penthouse no longer echoed with silence. The once sterile space now hummed with life. Lily's voice rising in exaggerated storytelling, Emily's laughter bubbling up as they argued over whose turn it was to brush the stuffed rabbit's fur. The girls had claimed the playroom as their kingdom, scattering crayons and dolls across the floor in a joyful mess that Victoria no longer rushed to tidy. Marcus and Lily's visits had evolved seamlessly. At first, it was weekends picnics in Central Park where the girls chased pigeons and Marcus taught Victoria how to skip stones on the pond. Then came midweek dinners with Marcus insisting on helping in the kitchen, his attempts at pasta sauce often ending in charred pots and shared chuckles. Before long, their toothbrushes appeared in the guest bathroom, a small suitcase of Lily's clothes tucked into a drawer. No unpacked bags or signed leases. It just happened like the changing seasons. Victoria found herself adapting in ways she never imagined. She learned to heat soy milk without scorching it, a staple for Lily's bedtime routine. In return, Marcus showed her the art of tying perfect bows on hair ribbons, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. They navigated the small frictions of blended lives, debates over screen time or vegetables at dinner, but always with quiet resolutions, no raised voices to disturb the peace they'd built. Evenings became sacred. After the girls were tucked in Victoria and Marcus retreated to the terrace, the city skyline a glittering backdrop. They sipped tea in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't demand words. It was in these moments that Victoria felt truly anchored, not by contracts or conquests, but by the simple act of being present. She'd canceled board meetings to read bedtime stories to Emily, her voice stumbling over fairy tales at first, then growing steadier as her daughter's hand squeezed hers. "Don't go, Mom. Emily would whisper, and Victoria stayed every time. Marcus too softened in unexpected ways. The hollow left by Sarah's death had begun to fill not with forgetting, but with new warmth. He cooked breakfasts on lazy Sundays, flipping pancakes while the girls giggled at his flour-dusted apron. Lily had taken to calling Victoria Vicky, in her sing-song voice, a nickname that made Victoria's heart swell. And when Marcus caught Victoria watching him with the girls, her eyes soft, unguarded, he'd pull her close, whispering, "This feels right." There was no grand wedding, no diamond rings or society announcements. Instead, one crisp afternoon in the park, they gathered for a simple picnic. The girls smeared ice cream on their faces, chasing each other through the leaves, while Marcus and Victoria sat on a blanket, hands intertwined. Later back home, Victoria printed a photo from her phone, the four of them piled together, faces flushed and joyful, leaves tangled in their hair. She stuck it to the fridge with a magnet scribbling in purple marker below, "Family is who makes you want to come home every day." They didn't need papers to bind them, no vows exchanged in front of witnesses, no legal ties to make it official. What held them was choice, the daily decision to stay. Marcus chose to share his quiet strength, teaching Victoria that love wasn't a transaction. Victoria chose to dismantle her walls, showing Marcus he was worthy of being chosen. The girls chose each other as sisters, their bond forged in shared secrets and late-night whispers. In the end, kindness had rewritten their stories. A single act in a hospital hallway, blood given without expectation, had unraveled Victoria's isolated world and filled Marcus's with unexpected light. It taught them that love bloomed not in perfection, but in the messy, inconvenient moments, spilled milk at breakfast, feverish nights with sick children, arguments resolved with apologies and hugs. As autumn deepened, they gathered on the terrace one evening, the girls asleep inside. Marcus wrapped an arm around Victoria, pulling her close against the chill. Below, the city pulsed with life, but up here their world was complete. "I never thought I'd have this again," he murmured. She leaned into him. "Neither did I. But we chose it every day." And in that choice, they found everything a family not defined by blood or names, but by the unbreakable thread of staying when it mattered most.